Okay, guys, here's the promised video that talks about how you're going to use the rubric for scoring. Now, first things first, I would like you to read through the rubric completely. It's best if you have the capability at home to print it out. If not, to open up a copy of it so that you can write on it, because I think you're going to want to make notes on it so that you can move forward with the scoring with the notes that you'll take from this video. All right. Okay, so basically, I'm not going to go through and read every block in each one of the columns. What I really want to do is help you to focus on what it is that makes the difference between a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. All right? And then you yourself will be able to use these blocks of text to describe why it is you scored it as a 3 and what specifically it needs to do to go into the 4 column. If you score it as a 4, what specifically they need to do to go into the 5 column. I don't think at this point anybody's going to be scoring 5 because I just don't think anybody's paper is going to be that flawless at this point. All right. Okay. So first things first, the real difference between a 1 and a 2 is whether there's a research method. Basically, a 1 is a report on information. It's very similar to our IWAs from seminar. In other words, it describes a search and report process where there was information that was gathered and then the student is reporting out on that information through quoted content. It can actually sound really quite good. You know, it can have a lit review and it can have all the elements of a research paper. It's just it doesn't describe a replicable method. It doesn't have any data having been collected. It doesn't come to a conclusion based on the student's own data or based on a method having been executed. So if you can't find evidence of a method, then it's a 1, all right? Okay, for a 2, basically there's a description of a non-replicable research method, which basically means they might have described a way that they're going to collect data, but they didn't describe it sufficiently. It was so oversimplified that you as a reader are reading it going, okay, I don't understand what they did here. But at least they're describing that they're going to take a question, a research question, and they're going to investigate it by data collection as opposed to just reporting out. So that's the criteria that really centrally differentiates a 2 from a 1. That means the 3 is the first time that there's real research having been executed. Now there's differences in the first, second, and third row. It's just now it describes a reasonably replicable research method, which means now you're getting to the point where you actually understand what they intend to do. Again, it might not be well aligned with the purpose, that is their research question. You might seriously wonder why they're choosing to collect data with this method because it may not align with their question. They may have situated it poorly. Again, you know, the connections to some works may be unclear. So basically their lit review looks like it might have been done for a different paper than this one. So again, there's ways in which there can be natural flaws. The key is this, and this is what differentiates a 3 from a 1 or a 2. Conveys a new understanding or conclusion with an underdeveloped line of reasoning or insufficient evidence. In other words, it conveys a new understanding as a result of the execution of this research method. That is, this is the first time that actual research has been done. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in a high quality manner to earn a 3. It just has to have been done. You have to see evidence that there was data collection through a reasonably replicable method and that new information came out as a result of it. Information that was not garnered from another source was actually garnered from the student's own generation of their data. All right. Again, a lot of these bottom lines, they really say almost the same thing across the board. So while these blocks are good for you to use as comments, they are not necessarily going to be things that you use to differentiate between a 2 and a 3, a 3 and a 4. All right. Okay, so what is it that makes a 4? Well, it really comes down to language. You know, this one carries the focus or scope of a topic of inquiry through the method and the overall line of reasoning. This one focuses a topic of inquiry with clear and narrow parameters which are addressed through the method and conclusion. In other words, a 4, there's a great degree of clarity and alignment, all right? Explicitly connects a topic. See that word explicitly rather than situates? Situates says, hey, there's all this literature about stuff, and I'm going to do something that's in that stuff too. Explicitly says, this is what these scientists discovered, and as a result of what they discovered, they left an opening, and I'm filling that opening. That's an explicit description, all right? And it logically explains how the topic of inquiry addresses the gap. Again, this one describes a reasonable or replicable method. This one logically defends it. So the 4 column talks about them defending their method and really giving an argument for the inevitability of their method. This one says it conveys a new understanding, which means it basically conveys it, it carries it. The paper says, here's something I learned as a result of doing it. This one supports that new understanding, so it does so logically. There's a line of reasoning that argues towards that. Once again, I keep using the word inevitability. That's what you're going to feel about a 4, is that so much of the paper leads inevitably to the student's conclusion, whereas on 3, their conclusions are going to appear to come out of thin air. There's not going to be an inevitability about it, all right? And again, the rest of this is all about the pretty much the same things. And then a 5 is really hard. You know, you're going to see more. This one, the language is the same about the explicit connection. So doing a really good job with the lit review selling the idea. Let's see, you know, logically defends the alignment, detailed, replicable, same thing. So where is it that a 5 is different from a 4? It's really these lines right here in the conclusion. Supports a new understanding, justifies a new understanding or conclusion. The explanation of the limitations, conclusions, and an explanation of the implications to the community of practice. So basically it's like, this is saying, this is what my research means back to those people in the lit review. Like now I'm fitting my research within the framework of their research. Now mine is a new voice added to the conversation. You're going to see that explicitly in a 5 where you don't see that in a 4. And again, this one talks about competently communicating the student's ideas. This one says it enhances the communication of the student's ideas. So here the paper is actually used as a vehicle to support the student's communication. Here the paper is simply used as, you know, the words in the paper communicate the student's ideas, but it isn't as if the paper's logic is carrying those ideas. The student maybe is not necessarily struggling, because there's almost nothing about a 4 that indicates a struggle, but is the paper enhancing what it is the student is saying? That's a differentiation for the 5. And of course, all the conventions have to be held pretty much for all of these. You know, you really don't get out of a 1 category if you have major problems with your, you know, with your citation style. All of them pretty much say few errors or inconsistencies from the 3 on up. So that's not a differentiable thing. For the 5, it really has to be almost perfectly written. You can't have, you know, strained text or repetition or, you know, poor conventions in grammar or mechanics. A 5 will prohibit those, a 4 allows a few, and a 3 allows a few more. So in terms of writing style, that's where that's going to fall. All right. So hopefully that did a good job of helping you guys to utilize the rubric. It's easier to use than you think, because most of these boxes don't help to differentiate between a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they can provide you with evidence to describe to the student why it justifies your score. But where you differentiate between the columns is far more significant to just a few of the boxes that represent those major milestones or benchmarks that a paper has to meet to move from a 1 to a 2, 2 to a 3, 3 to a 4. And as I said, let's leave off on the 5s for now. Let's give everybody something to shoot for. All right. Okay, as with everything, you know, give me an email this weekend if you're running into any problems. And remember, Sunday at midnight, I need those drafts turned in. Okay.